Welcome, Chris, to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. We're so excited to have you here. Let's start off with you introducing yourself to our listeners.
Well, I grew up in America, and I came out to Asia, to Vietnam in 1992 when I was doing a junior year abroad. And I was backpacking around that year, and I was also in Asia to study Buddhism at that time. And I just had such a great experience that I wanted to come back to Vietnam as soon as I graduated, which is what I did. And initially, I worked for Templeton for 6 years, first in Vietnam and then in Singapore. And towards the end of that, I realized I wanted to set up my own business, and I wanted to be in Vietnam. And I wanted to create a new model of investing in Vietnam that was more value added. So I set up what became the first private equity investment fund in Vietnam back in 2001. So that was 21 years ago, and our company Mekong Capital has been through many phases and discoveries and transformations along the way. But ultimately, we've been pretty successful.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction about yourself. I feel that in this age of disruption, an entrepreneurial mindset is a key mindset for one to have, because I describe that as being resourceful, being someone who knows how to manage risk and create value. What are your thoughts about entrepreneurial mindset, Chris?
We've been able in Mekong to invest in, I think, more than 40 companies over the years. We've had some great successes and some failures. And there's clearly some patterns that have emerged. Which sorts of entrepreneurs have been more successful? One place to start is that the more successful ones have a real willingness to transform themselves. They don't feel like they have to have all the answers, or they have to stay the same way and keep being who they were at the beginning of the journey, but rather they're willing to transform, like as leaders and as communicators. And I'd say that that leadership transformation journey has really been critical and 100% correlated to the success of at least the companies that we've invested in that have been successful. So any of our big successful companies, there's a story of people who really transformed themselves, and they discovered leadership. They discovered integrity. They made a choice to really give their word to whatever vision that they had committed themselves to for their company, and people knew that they're really standing for that, and that ultimately played an important role in their success.
Wow, that's really interesting. When you look at an entrepreneurial mindset, one key attribute that you can see is the willingness to transform. And the willingness to transform begins with ourselves as an individual. And then, of course, to also impact our companies and our teams as a collective. And this willingness to transform, you've also described it as, us becoming a leader, or our ability to communicate. That's really useful, because as a leader, are we people who have integrity to give our word and keep it? Are we committed to that big vision that we've created? And I guess what you haven't said is that as we pursue a vision, we need to keep adapting, we need to keep pivoting, altering, because circumstances can change. And that is that nimbleness that you are expecting to see when someone has an entrepreneurial mindset.
I would like to add, there's always got to be some vision in the future. The vision may change, and that's okay. And that's normal, actually. Companies will revise their vision or create a new one before they achieved their old one. But they've got to have a clear goal in the future that everyone's aligned around, the relevant people care about personally, is something that is fulfilled through the vision. They can connect their work back to the vision and see what's their role in delivering the vision. That's part of the role of the entrepreneur, is to get everyone to see all that and discover that and make it about the vision and then stand for that.
When you look back at Mekong Capital, at your own journey, what were the challenges, the turning points, and how did you get this vision to be the unifying focal point for the team?
Early on, starting in 2001, we really had no vision. We had, I guess, some intentions to add value and to our companies and to be the first fund to invest in private companies in Vietnam. But we didn't really have clear, measurable results in the future that we had committed ourselves to. We just thought that focusing on private companies and trying to add value would somehow lead to success, but it didn't. For the first 5 or 6 years, we were trying really hard to add value to these investments. We were, doing things like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma and trying a lot of stuff, doing a lot of work for our companies, like writing job descriptions for them and giving them the job descriptions. But it just had no impact. At the beginning, we believed it would work, but after 5 or 6 years, it just became apparent that a lot of these companies weren't growing and they weren't hitting their targets. When we looked at the data, around 1/3 of our investments were on track and 2/3 were not. And then at first I thought that I'm not a good leader. And I thought, oh, Vietnamese people are too different. I grew up in America and maybe I don't understand Vietnamese culture. I thought, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm not a natural leader. And I was stuck. The turning point for me was in June 2007. I went to Singapore and I participated in the Landmark Forum. And my Landmark Forum leader was Purani. And I discovered that I'm the source of it all, not like it's something bad, but I started to have a lot of power that I didn't know that I had. And immediately started to have some new conversations with our team members. And I started to take responsibility for some things where I had previously been the victim and started to create some sort of integrity in our organization. And it just started from there and kept building. One thing led to another. And then we engaged in a 3-year transformation program that both you, Dr. Ramesh, and Purani led together. And it was a success. It was harder than what I wanted it to be. It took 3 years, really. And at first, we didn't have a lot of support for this internally within Mekong. People didn't understand, why are we transforming? Why do we need to create these new core values? And why do we need to be responsible all of a sudden? So there were some challenges at first, but we persisted. By the end of 3 years, it was working. By 2010, we were actually much more effective at everything. What investments we made, how we added value, our companies were performing better, our team was just more effective. And then it sustained, and we just built on that from 2010 onwards.
So then, Chris, what was that enduring quality or the North Star that kept you on track? Because when you started the transformation process, things didn't necessarily go the way you wanted. There were challenges, right?
Yeah.
But what had you stay on course?
Relentless perseverance towards the vision. Part of that transformation process is that in the middle of it, we created a vision, and it took us 14 days, but it worked. We had an alignment process, and then over a 6-month period, we finally had co-created this vision. That was probably a critical turning point, that now we had something very clear and specific in the future that we were standing for, and we gave our word to it and just basically didn't back down. And then after that, make it all about the vision, and people would have a choice. Do they choose that they want to be in a company that this is the vision or not? And do they choose this vision for themselves? And maybe it wasn't right for everyone, but some people definitely did choose it. And, we gave our word to it. So it's a matter of integrity. Like I promise that you can rely on me to do whatever I need to do to contribute and cause this vision to be achieved. And then, as more and more people, created a powerful relationship to their own word and choosing the vision, then we had more and more people who were organized around it. But I guess at the core, I had an unrelenting perseverance around the vision and just didn't back down from it. And whenever obstacles come up, I make it about the vision, not about something else.
That's right. So it's almost like you became that vision, because that was the most important thing to protect. and take care of. Do you find that an entrepreneurial mindset could be useful for people who work in corporates as employees? Is that something that they can use on a day-to-day basis?
Certainly, yes. One dimension that we've seen about more successful companies is that those that can delegate down decision-making to the front lines, basically they can adapt and grow faster. Even the entrepreneurial thinking of making business decisions rather than having to follow strict rules. The companies where the intentions or goals are clear, including the vision, they can rely on people to make the best choices or decisions around what will lead to the vision and delegate down the decision making. Of course, those companies do perform much better. So for example, in the past, one of our investments is called Mobile World, and they were our first investment to really embrace transformation. Part of the way that they did it, what they got early on, was the importance of really cascading things down to the front lines, including the culture and the core values, but also the decision making. And so they were able to become Vietnam's largest retailer, in part because they were able to delegate and rely on their team very much on the front lines when their competitors couldn't. Their competitors were very top down. The CEO had to decide everything, and then everyone had to follow the CEO's instructions, and often they weren't implemented well. But in Mobile World, they were able to, open 50 or more stores per month and rapidly adjust to the market because they were able to trust their people to make those decisions without even having to go back to the head office. So they were able to operate on a much larger scale and conquer the market.
That's a great case study, how a company can unleash the entrepreneurial acumen of their team, as well as delegate the decision rights so that they are making those choices on a day-to-day basis because they're clear of the vision, they're clear of the direction, and they're just getting their job done inside of that big picture. Let's move a little bit more into leadership and decision making. I want to specifically talk about women. You're someone who has encouraged women to have greater role in leadership and decision making. What was that motivation? Why are you so passionate about that?
I don't think I started off that way, but I think what happened over time was a lot of our strongest team members were women. It wasn't deliberate. Right. It just kind of happened. And I'd say it even more so women that have had children. There's some transformation they maybe go through as mothers that I find them to be very responsible and have, of course, great empathy, just very reliable and stable. That was just who was performing best. Now 80% of our team are more women, and it's probably moving even more in that direction.
That's great. And you continue to empower them. And would you have any advice for young people who are coming into the industry about how they can develop themselves?
That's a hard one. I mean, our business is very unique because we're very focused on transformation and coaching. The people that will work in Mekong Capital generally are people that are really enthusiastic about leadership and transformation and coaching. People that have already gone on some journey in that direction are probably going to be a strong fit with what we're looking for. But that may not be necessarily for other companies. One of the skills that is a challenge that is important that we keep looking for. Question asking skills, really asking for the intentions of things. If there's one area where I wish that at least the education system could deliver something better, it would be like people being really effective at asking penetrating questions to get to the root causes. And then what's the intention of this and why is it important and how does it connect to the big picture? That's an important skill that we need that often is missing in a lot of candidates that we meet.
So it's to encourage people to be curious, but also to probe a little bit more and not to just, take the surface level answer.
That's correct. Yes. and to be very comfortable asking questions. There's no hesitation or concern that I'm asking too much. Most of the work we do involves asking questions. One of the discoveries we've made is that you can't give transformation to someone else. You can't even give them a solution. It just doesn't work. It's all about what they discover for themselves. And that generally happens through asking them questions.
One more last question. It's about family businesses. The statistics are that about 80% of all businesses end up being family businesses. Uh-huh. And you yourself, you were part of a family which founded a business about 100 years ago and ran it successfully for a number of years. And Mekong Capital, as a private equity firm, has also invested in family businesses. What do you feel is that one thing or two things that family businesses could do better so that they can move into the next generation and thereafter in today's world?
I've noticed there's a very big cultural divide between what I would call an entrepreneurial company and a family company. So an entrepreneurial company, especially if you have multiple co-founders, tends to be very performance driven. So they're clear about what results they need, and they're organized around that. And they hire people based on who can deliver those results. And they may fire people based on who's not delivering those results. Whereas the family business culture is very much more about loyalty and trust, not about performance. And it shows up in so many ways, not just the fact that family members are working there, but all the priorities in the company seem to be more about trust and loyalty, who I can trust and to not get cheated or to not lose something. But it's not about who can deliver results. So they don't hire based on that. They don't fire based on that. And they attract a different kind of person. They'll attract people that are more interested to be in a company where if they're just loyal, that they can build a career that way rather than actually producing great results. So there is a huge cultural gap I have found, and yet I don't know the answer to how to break out of it. I've heard stories of companies that have done it, but the stories are basically remove all family members. So that's what I've heard.
You're pointing to something very insightful, and that is so accurate about entrepreneurial companies founded by several individuals as co-founders. What brings them together as almost like an intention, and even that vision is to produce results and be successful, versus a family business where over time it might be that when the founder started off, he or she was that way. But over time, as the business passes on from generation to generation, what becomes more important is loyalty and trust. And that it's almost in the way of performance and result. It's almost like, you've got to make a trade-off. One of the key things that we've found in our work with family-owned businesses is to create a future for the family first. Like their own vision as a family. What it does is that it allows the family, especially as individuals, family members, as well as the family as a collective, to be able to see that there is a difference between individual aspirations, the business's strategy, as well as the vision for the family to go beyond that generation. When they have awareness about these different roles that they play, it then gives them the ability to zoom out and to look at their business as that one expression of them in the community, but also there are other expressions that they can go out there and fulfill, which gives them the opportunity as well as the permission not to be involved in the business. It's almost like you're disloyal for saying, I don't want to be in the family business. Now you're saying it's okay that we're not involved and we're professionalizing, and it's not about me being disloyal. And I think that's one of the key struggles that they have as well.
We used to have many investments in family businesses. So it wasn't that we didn't try, but they were never really successful. We kept hitting up against the same issues.
I want to move on to a new topic, and it's about crisis. I describe as a kind of a setback that we deal with in life. It can be professional, it can be personal. How you deal with crisis, and what have you found to be the thing that keeps you grounded to move forward in a crisis?
Yeah, we've been through some challenging times ourselves in Mekong Capital. So we've had our own crucible event, which started around the time of our transformation process. Basically, our revenues were declining and our track record wasn't good enough yet to raise new funds. So we had to keep alive, but with lower and lower revenues every year. And it was actually ultimately a great experience because it forced us to focus on what really matters and really think through what do we need to invest our time and capital into. And what kept us going was our vision and just sticking to it no matter what, and making it about that future that we're committed to. And I think at that time we had actually very low turnover. We were short of capital and we didn't really have the money to pay the full salaries we had previously paid. We had people very willing to stay and be part of it because they believed in the future. And I think that was critical. If there was no future or they couldn't see the future, people would have all left. But the future was present, it was clear what it was. They could see the pathway. They knew that we were facing challenges at the time, but there was clarity that the future is achievable and this is what we need to do in order to achieve it. And so they stayed. Later, I found out that even some of our team members had got side jobs like at nighttime to just make ends meet, but they still didn't quit. They just needed extra income and they didn't want to quit. So they found ways to get through it. And then, of course, we did, and then became much more successful after that.
What you've shared is that the future expressed as a vision has got the power to rally and focus people, even in the midst of a crisis. That becomes the key thing that you're working towards, rather than get overwhelmed by what you see as a current setback.
That's right. Yeah, I think some companies make a mistake of putting all the attention on all the fires that they're dealing with. And they think, oh, let's put everyone's attention on all these fires and try to put out the fires. And then later we'll come back and create a vision. But the fires never go out if they do that way. In fact, what they'll have is a lot of people quitting who don't want to be part of it. They're not going to be able to recruit anybody new. They're going to see no future in the company. And it's just going to go from bad to worse. We've had companies that have gone through that. Like a year ago, one of our investments is called Red Walk, and it's a restaurant business. During the lockdowns of COVID, they basically had no revenues. At first, they were in a real firefighting mode, and the team was quite weak at that time. They decided, okay, we're going to redo our vision, we're going to redo our core values, we're going to rebuild what this is all about, and even rebuild our team. And that's what they did. Now they're very strong. They've got everything. It's just working for them. If they hadn't done that, they probably wouldn't have gotten through the crisis they were in. But now the vision's so strong. And if you go to their office and you meet the CEO, he insists talking about the vision and the core values. He won't let you have a conversation about something else until you understand what the core values are, which is great because I'm sure he's doing that with his team, and the people he's got choose to be there because that's the culture that they chose.
Chris, this resonates so much with how I think and I feel about life, that it's important to have this future present for all of us. And the other side of having a future present for us at all times, whether it is a corporate vision or our own personal future as a vision, is that then we become interested in the future too. Because we then have to make choices which are going to impact the future, and has us be more responsible for, what we invest in, what we make as decisions. And do you find that also makes it easier for you to be interested in what's happening for the future of this universe or mankind?
Having clarity about it, sometimes it's even subconscious. Once we're clear what that futures that we've committed ourselves to. We just naturally kind of go in that direction. But there's times when it just helps for making decisions. When you think, okay, what is our vision? What are we committed to here? And what's the best decision to make in relation to that vision? That always provides clarity. So for example, in Mekong Capital, our vision is that every one of our investee companies achieves their vision. That's paramount. Sometimes we have to make a choice, for example, between growing faster and every company achieving their vision. Whenever we think back to our vision, then the answer is very clear that our investees achieving their vision comes first. And only when that's on track, then we can grow. So that helps us, I think, having the vision, the future clear, it just naturally materializes. I also have a personal vision, and I keep it up to date and revise it all the time. And it's been amazing for me just having that clarity. Somehow it all kind of just falls into place.
Can you share with us what's your personal vision?
It's quite extensive. I actually have a name for it. It's called New Dawn of the Earth Goddess. But there's some central themes in it: transformation, being present, nature, choice and freedom, healthy. It materializes in different pieces. For example, I really believe in the power of getting enough sleep. And I think people don't fully understand the importance of sleep. So part of my vision is that I'm committed to a future of the world in which people are getting basically 8 hours of sleep per night, or as much as they really need. Microbiome is very important as well. And it's often underestimated. There's a lot of negative impact of antibiotics and pesticides and other things. And people aren't aware of the health benefits of having a healthy microbiome. So that is also part of my vision, that future of the world in which people are aware of that and being responsible for microbiome health. My vision has about 30 different pieces like that. The central themes of it would be like integration with nature, being healthy, choice and freedom, transformation.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I'm going to move on to a related topic. It's about spirituality and where you are in this journey. You studied Buddhism and you spent some time in India and Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries. So please share with us how that journey started for you.
Well, I grew up Jewish and it just didn't make much sense to me, really. I kept seeing a book on the bookshelves at my friends' houses. And the book is called Be Here Now by Ram Dass. And that was a very influential book, I'd say in the 1970s and 80s. It was written by someone who used to be a Harvard professor of psychology, who together with Timothy Leary at the same time, started doing psychedelics at Harvard, and then both got fired from Harvard. And then he went off to India and met his guru and went on a spiritual transformation journey and then shared it in that book. So that book inspired a lot of people, including me, to be interested in, I'd say at that time, Hinduism and Buddhism. And then I chose, okay, I need to go to India and have a similar journey myself. Back then, when I was younger, I joined a lot of different groups, like sometimes meditation groups like Zen centers or transcendental meditation. And then I joined a Sikh group called Science of Spirituality. I joined a number of different groups, and there was a Sai Baba group that I was part of in Santa Cruz, California, and some others. And I was just exploring. My junior year abroad was to go to Bodh Gaya, India, to study Buddhism. It was a great program. It was really good. I got all kinds of exposure to different schools of Buddhist teaching and got to practice different traditions. And then it was after that I lived at a monastery in Thailand and then was backpacking around Asia. And that's when I first came to Vietnam. And then at some point, though, I kind of backtracked a bit. Thought, okay, I'm not ready to become a monk, so I'm going to pursue more kind of worldly dramas. And I made that choice at some point. It was around maybe 2012 or so in Mekong that suddenly all the interest in Buddhism started to come back alive. And we learned that a lot of our team members were also very interested in this. And so we started to inquire, what about Buddha's teaching can we apply to our culture within Mekong Capital, or who we're being? And we made all kinds of discoveries. So I'd say that's an inquiry. I wouldn't want to say I have the answers, but it's an ongoing place to look. But we did notice a lot of kind of complementary ways of looking about what would Buddha's teaching put our attention on? Who are we being and what are we doing in Mekong Capital? These days in Vietnam, there's a lot of interest in meditation. So many CEOs that I know, they all meditate. Of course, Thich Nhat Hanh is a great Vietnamese leader, and he's inspired a lot of people. So I think there's a great appreciation for Buddha's teaching in this country.
That's right. And so are you back actively practicing Buddhism again?
I'm committed to being present and mindful. I don't have like a regular meditation practice, for example. I was going to flotation tanks because near where I live, there's a flotation tank center where you float on salt water in a dark space. I haven't done that since the lockdowns ended.
The lockdowns have changed some of our lifestyle and our old activities.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's a really great about how you shared starting off on that journey of inquiry from being born a Jewish person to Hinduism, Buddhism, and and then getting involved in whatever that human drama was in the world, and then coming back to from your commitment to building a culture in the organization to Buddhism, but now to look at spirituality really in terms of how you described your personal vision, like new dawn of Earth Goddess. Mm-hmm. I can get why it's not a religion or a spiritual practice, because it's about that whole dawn of an Earth Goddess. It's emerging.
Yeah, I have an intention also that I think in terms of the energy in the world, I think it's got to shift more towards female energy and female leadership. In the past, including in Vietnam, there are some traditions of Earth Goddess worshipping or Earth Mother or something like that. And I appreciate that Vietnam has those traditions too, and they have some temples like that. And it seems to me that the world would be in a better place if we had better balance.
Nurturing energy. Great. So do you think it's possible to live a simple life?
I've been able to create the lifestyle that I want. For example, I only work 4 days per week. I don't work on Fridays, and I'm able to have great discipline with the hours that I work. So I definitely do not bring work home with me. I wouldn't do like work-related emails in the evening. I don't even feel any temptation to do that. And I'm able to go home when I want to most of the time. And I just make very minor exceptions to that. So I have created the balance that I want to have. So yeah, I think it is possible, but it takes constant inquiry to look at where do we really adding value and where are we not, and be willing to say no to a lot of the things that are just not working or that we're not really adding value. And of course, look to where we can delegate more, and just keep inquiring.
If you had to describe thriving or flourishing in life, what would you think is essential for that? What do we need to thrive and flourish as individuals?
Well, one is to discover that you have choice in all matters of everything in your life, and you're experiencing freedom, being healthy and living a lifestyle where you can be healthy. And I think included with that is being close to nature. Being too disconnected from nature is unnatural and it's unhealthy. It's our natural state is to be connected to nature. And when people are too disconnected from that, it's just a miserable life, I think. It's a wonderful life to be close to nature. Like I have a garden with a lot of plants at my house, and I definitely really enjoy being in that garden and just being out among the plants. It feels good.
I have one more set of questions, and it's actually about your book, The Crab Hot Pot. What was the inspiration to write this book?
What was definitely something I was experiencing in our company. So I was in Mekong Capital. There was something going on, and we had different people had different views. They all had good intentions about how to fix it. One person's view is people aren't aligned. Someone else's view is we should have a workshop. And someone else's view was that I'm not responsible for this. It was just, I could see the mechanism of everyone, their own individual perspectives. They didn't come together towards getting the situation resolved. And then I thought, I have to write a story about this, and just popped into my head that, okay, make this into a pot of crabs. Almost every crab in there is really based on a real person in Mekong Capital. I just translated the people in our company into crabs.
We do a lot of work with corporate culture transformation, and it's spot on because it describes the challenge of any kind of change in an organization. It's interesting. We're also now working with young people of a family business, the next generation. We were sort of struggling in terms of what are we going to use to have them look at behavior. And then it was, you had given me this book, and then we decided, okay, maybe we'll go through this book with them and have them see how different behavior has a different impact, and then use that to have a conversation about sustainability. And it's work in progress, but we find that they're very curious. It's actually easy enough for kids to understand it too.
Yeah, we thought at first it might be too abstract for the kids, but no, they can get it. And even about how the crabs can shed an old perspective and choose a new one, just like shedding their old shells and growing a new one.
Do you have any specific message for the readers of that book?
Well, one way of looking at it is that you have a choice over how you're going to see things. And if you choose to create a point of view about the future where you're aligned with everyone else, you align around some shared goal for the future, then you can make it happen. But if everyone's just going to stay stuck in their own point of view, it's probably not going to go anywhere. You could apply that to anything, to politics, to global warming, to an organization. When there's not a shared committed goal in the future, then, well, it's not going to happen.
That's right. The power of the collective, right? Because if we want to move things, then we have to come together and work as a collective versus being an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.